And welcome to The Bond, the show where you bond with nature. And today we want to talk a little bit about how would you address a food desert, or a place that has a big city where some people have little access to fresh produce. And one of the things that we want to discuss is a solution to that. So today our guest is going to be David Caesar with Agritecture. Now he has a fascination with Blue Planet Consulting and also a controlled agricultural environment, otherwise known as CEA. He has an MBA in sustainable management, and he has been working with Agritecture in order to lend his expertise as they showcase their wares around a variety of different trade shows like AgriMe, Vertical Farming, World Congress, VertiFarm, and of course Agri-Food Innovation Summit, along with many others that are trying to understand the best way to integrate agriculture into architecture in order to leverage some of the best of both worlds so that people in big cities can also understand the benefits of fresh produce and how do we make that work. One example would be a place like Riverside, California, which is known to be in a high heat desert area. How could that be a hub? And we would like to go ahead and introduce David Caesar now. David, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, fabulous. Well, today we'd like to first of all start off with maybe just a couple of brief definitions that could help educate our audience about the basics. So could you start off with the difference between aquaponics and biophilic design and give us some of those definitions?
Okay, so kind of in the area where I work, you'll hear a lot of terms like aquaponics, hydroponics, biophilic design thrown around. And so it's important to understand what those mean. Also controlled environment agriculture. So let's start with controlled environment agriculture.
Fabulous.
And what that is, it is growing crops in either a greenhouse or an indoor farm, where you're controlling the environment to some degree to get a better outcome for your crops.
So does that mean you could use any environment? I can use an old warehouse. I can use a grain silo that was abandoned 20 years ago. I can use a pickup truck. Or not a pickup truck, a semi truck. What's an environment that I could use for farming?
Any of those will potentially work for controlled environment agriculture. Warehouses, reuse of warehouses in cities is a common technique for growing things like mushrooms or salad greens in a vertical farm. So any of those will work. Some of them are definitely more suited than others. So some are going to be more practical than others and probably more successful. But essentially, you can convert any indoor space into a growing environment if you make the necessary modifications.
Okay, and now are you only able to do short crops like lettuce is very short, but corn is tall?
So you can do, from a technical perspective, you can grow any crop.
Okay, just as long as you have enough shelf space.
But from a financial feasibility perspective, it's going to be very difficult to grow something like corn.
Okay.
Lettuce is a crop, for example, that grows very quickly. You can plant it and harvest it within 30 days or less. So you have you have a high percentage of biomass that you can sell. So you can essentially create a lot of revenue in a small space. But corn, for example, the crop cycle for growing corn is much longer, right? And the price for corn is much lower in general than a crop like salad greens. And so it would be very difficult to make the economics work for corn. But from the technical perspective, you can grow anything.
But now what about the use of water and soil and all that? A traditional farm has rows and rows of crops, and they have crop dusters. So you've got the need to control pests. How is pests and water addressed inside a controlled environment? for agriculture?
Yeah, so in a controlled environment, there's two advantages, or those two are two advantages of using a controlled environment. So in traditional agriculture, when you irrigate, the water goes down into the soil, and
Right.
it quickly moves out of the root zone,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the plants are only able to access a percentage of what you give.
Or it
Um,
evaporates in the hot heat.
or it can evaporate in the hot heat, right? And you can use things like mulches to reduce evaporation, things like that. In indoor farming, you create a circular irrigation system. So you're irrigating the plants, and then you're recovering that water or nutrient solution,
Mm-hmm.
and you're adding a little bit more nutrients to it to kind of balance it out, and then you're sending it to the plants again. So you create a cycle where you're just reusing your irrigation water. So controlled environment agriculture is definitely more water thrifty than outdoor agriculture, and that's why
It
you
is.
see
So
a
it's more
lot of
water efficient.
much more water efficient. Yeah, and that's why you see a lot of controlled environment agriculture in areas that are extremely dry. So areas like the Middle East, like Saudi Arabia,
Mm-hmm.
UAE, Israel, those countries which are extremely water stressed, or they need to produce desalinated water, which is quite expensive. They use these water efficient production methods.
So then what is the difference between aquaponics and hydroponics?
So hydroponics means you are growing plants and essentially feeding them with a water-based solution. So a mixture of water and fertilizers,
Okay.
right? And this solution, there's many different techniques within hydroponics, but essentially you're bathing the roots with this solution, which is
The nutrients in it.
water and food. Exactly.
Okay.
Aquaponics is a different system where fish provide the nutrients for the plants. So you have essentially a large fish tank,
Mm-hmm.
and then next to it you could have a area where you're growing lettuce or other plants. You feed the fish, and then you pump the water and waste from the fish tank to the plants. And there's some chemical processes that happen in that, but the idea is that the fish waste is used as fertilizer. It breaks down,
Mm-hmm.
it feeds the plant, and then the substrate that the plant is growing in, it could be sand, it could be different substrates, that
Sure.
is used as a filter, and then the water can be sent back to the fish tank.
But does that mean that you could also, I mean, theoretically, could you have trout in your tank so that way you could also harvest the fish as well, in addition to having them be fertilizer?
That's the idea, is that you're
doing two
a
crops.
closed cycle.
Okay.
And you're have two crops, but in actuality, it's quite difficult to do well because it's hard to kind of optimize the system for both crops. But it's something that, yes, can be done.
So that's where your technical expertise comes in with trying to design some of these things. So is it that you go and you lay out the blueprints for some of these designs, or does your company actually build an establishment, take an old warehouse and convert it into something that could grow crops?
Yeah, so we focus more on sort of like the earlier stages of projects. So
okay.
we focus in two areas. One is feasibility studies. So a lot of people come to us, they're interested in farming, but they don't have experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so we want to help them determine, before they spend a lot of money, to see if their project is going to be feasible.
Okay.
Right. And then the second is the planning stages. So once they're determined their project is going to be feasible, or maybe they have other goals that they're trying to pursue, educational goals, things like that, we can help them plan and design their farm. So determine what type of equipment is best for them, help them recruit the people they need to operate their farm.
So getting it all set up.
and get it all set up and beginning to operate. We don't build farms ourselves, but we are sort of like a connector where we'll put folks in contact with the people they need to be in contact with to have a successful project.
All right, if I were to use a construction analogy, would that be like the general contractor that sort of organizes all the different specialists in order to get the building created?
Yeah, you could say that.
Okay, well, only if it's accurate. Well, then tell me a little bit about indoor farming in general. Do you ever see it replacing outdoor farming as a concept?
It definitely will not replace outdoor farming.
And tell me why it won't. Tell me why outdoor farming still has a place, but indoor farming addresses other needs.
Yeah, so indoor farming will replace outdoor farming, I think, on a niche, in certain specific niches, right? But not on a widespread basis. Indoor farming, greenhouse agriculture, and indoor farming it's more expensive to set up, right?
Right, sure.
And so for growing sort of like the main staple crops that we need to feed our world, things like corn and soybeans and potatoes and rice.
All that's outdoors?
Yeah. All the production costs would be, much greater, and the majority of the world would not be able to afford those crops. Now, we may come to a time in the future where there is a lot of different climate events that interrupt the normal kind of outdoor production cycles.
Sure,
and if that were to occur on a large scale, then potentially, controlled environment agriculture, there could be a shift to produce some of the staple crops in controlled environment agricultural systems. But at this time, it's definitely would not be anywhere close to financially viable compared to outdoor production. But at the same time, you do see certain crops that are moving into controlled environment agriculture. So, for example, if you look at things like cherry tomatoes and tomatoes, sort of like on the vine tomatoes, and if you go back 30 years, so the 1990s, the majority of those tomatoes were grown outdoors in the U.S. And now probably 80 to 90% of those tomatoes are grown indoors.
And so that's why we can offer organic tomatoes pesticide free, because they're grown indoors. So we basically close the door on all the pests. There's no pests even introduced during the growing process. Is that right?
That's the idea. That's one of the main benefits of controlled environment agriculture, is if your facility is set up in an appropriate way, you can keep the pests out, right? And then you don't have to rely on pesticides for control of those pests.
I think that's fantastic. So we'll have to take a short break right now, but stay with us, because when we come back, we're going to talk about how jobs are going to be impacted with the concept of indoor farming. Stay with us. We'll be right back. welcome back. We are having a fantastic discussion with David Caesar of Agritecture, and he is telling us all about indoor farming. So the next question I am dying to ask you is, what about farmers' jobs? So when we talk about new innovations, we're thinking about new technology displacing old technology. So could you tell me how the future of jobs are going to be impacted?
Sure. So one thing that's really interesting and not a lot of people know is that all around the world, traditional agriculture has an aging problem, an aging out problem. And what that means is that most soil-based farmers, or many, not most soil-based farmers are the average age is, mid to late 50s or even early 60s. And this is all around the world. And many of those farms don't have a younger generation that is looking to take over the farm. So what we're seeing worldwide is that agriculture has an aging problem. And at the same time, we also see that the younger generation is much more interested in controlled environment agriculture because of the sort of technology emphasis that it has. So young people today, as you know, are growing up with lots of technology in their pockets.
Of course.
Right? They're used to data, they're used to screens, they're used to sensors, all these types of things. And these things are more relevant and more common in controlled environment agriculture. So we definitely see a much stronger interest among the next generation, the younger generation, in controlled environment agriculture versus soil-based agriculture. So we believe that controlled environment agriculture is going to be critical to sort of re-engaging the next generation into agriculture.
So that we can still have a food supply that we're growing. But
exactly.
But how much education is it going to take an existing farmer to learn to go from an outdoor farm to having a certain percentage of their farm acreage converted into an indoor farm?
Yeah, so it doesn't take a huge amount of education. And what we would suggest is there's a lot of outdoor farmers who, for example, especially in cooler areas, right? It's hard to grow crops in the winter.
Yes.
And if you take a small portion of your land and set up a greenhouse, right? You can operate that greenhouse during the winter months. So we really suggest that outdoor farmers look to begin with controlled environment agriculture on a small basis as sort of a way to supplement the farming that they're currently doing, right? And to sort of break into it that way, right? It's not difficult. There are definitely differences between soil-based agriculture and hydroponics, for example.
Sure.
But it's definitely not rocket science. And I'm sure that with a little bit of time, sort of like on-the-job learning,
they'd be able to make that transition and still retain their profit margin that they're used to. So that's the goal. So what you're saying is that they're not just keeping their jobs, they're enhancing their job skills, but they're also welcoming in a younger generation of potential farmer who is going to be a little bit more tech savvy. Is that right?
Exactly. The other thing is, by setting up a greenhouse on your property in the cooler months, the cooler months are when things are not produced locally. And most of the items that are coming to your location, wherever that may be, need to come in from a further distance, right? So it's actually a time when farmers can get a premium for their products, right? So it's a really great complement to a soil-based production system to set up a greenhouse for kind of off-season production, for sure.
So then after they have developed a certain percentage of their land into an indoor farm and they're making all of these delicious crops like lettuce or even specialty herbs, microgreens, all of that, how do they get those to restaurants, or do restaurants even care about taking that in?
What we found is that restaurants are very, very motivated to kind of differentiate themselves from other restaurants whatever
You mean like
city they're
gourmet
located.
restaurants, or is this your average coffee shop?
Um, so I would say more on the gourmet side, but we see
Okay.
it with all types of restaurants, right? They want to differentiate themselves. They want to do something that's different to get customers to, want to come visit them and go back.
Mm-hmm.
And we see that by many chefs are very interested in forming relationships with farms, with local farms. Um, and that's really good sort of like two-way relationship, right?
Uh-huh.
Because the farm can be sort of like a testing ground for the chef, and the chef can promote for the farm within the restaurant by talking about what the farm's doing, having the farmer come and speak, describing on their menu the different things that the farm is growing and other ways to support the farm. So we see it as a really great way for sort of farms and restaurants to kind of partner up
So,
and really help each other.
so the chef can get that exotic fresh herb that normally he'd have to source from far away and get it shipped in. He could just go down to his local farmer and ask for that to be grown and have it be on repeat order. That sounds great. Sounds like a win-win situation.
Potentially, or the farmer might say, hey, you know what? There's no way I can grow that here, but we could grow something that's, kind of similar, and it might go great in your salad or your soup, and, and kind of have things work that way.
Fabulous flavor profile. So what sort of innovations do you see with Agritecture in the next few years? Where do you see the future of it?
So, agritecture is a word, sort of like an invented word. It's the combination of agriculture and architecture. And our company, Agritecture, was started by our founder and current CEO, Henry Gordon Smith, as he was exploring urban agriculture and what it takes to sort of integrate agriculture into cities. We see that there is a really big emphasis on, in many places, to incorporate as much agriculture and local food production into cities moving forward. There was so much disruption because of COVID.
Oh,
right?
of course, yeah.
Where lots of places couldn't get the crops or the food supplies that they needed, and that lots of places who are definitely, especially import dependent, are really putting a focus on trying to improve their sort of like self-sufficiency
and the supply chain, the whole supply chain.
Yeah,
that
make
makes
shorter
sense.
supply chains and try and encourage kind of develop as many resources as possible to allow for food production in cities, for sure.
So for a city that would be interested in leveraging some of your skill sets and helping to plan a part of their city to become a food hub, what advice would you give a city that would be interested in adopting this as a concept and making it reality?
Yeah, so it's really important to think about food production, like who the producers will be, who the consumers will be, and think about the whole thing not just as kind of like independently, let's set up a farm and see what happens. We really need to look at the entire food system and how these potential changes, can fit into the existing food system and move it into a direction to be more self-sufficient.
Maybe even get an electric vehicle to go from the vertical farm to the destination of either a restaurant or a grocery store or something along those lines. Have a nice sustainable green loop.
Yeah, I was recently working on a project in the Maldives, in the small island nation south of India, and they had major disruptions due to COVID, and they're trying to increase their self-sufficiency, and we suggested sort of like a whole set of implementations relating to food production, relating to education in their schools, and training of young people to be able to work in these facilities, as well as making their existing farms a little bit larger and more efficient. So and then also identifying different ways to distribute their produce in a way that really captures value for their farmers and for their population. So it needs to be sort of like a well thought out set of initiatives that kind of work together.
Absolutely.
But it's something that, agritecture.
But it's doable. It's doable, right?
For sure, it's doable, of course.
Well, I think that is fantastic. So I just wanted to say thank you, David, so much. I think that you have really educated our audience on not only the art of mixing design of agriculture with architecture into agritecture, but also of the benefits of having indoor farming and how that can help with attracting a new level of farmer, and also how we're all eager and hungry to learn how to do this, how to involve it in our city. So I wanted to say thank you so much for joining us and sharing your wisdom with us.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a great pleasure. And if anyone has questions at all, please check out our website, agritecture.com.
Okay.
You can learn more about what's going on in agriculture, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions.
And if they're a farmer and they want to know more about how to set up a vertical farm, same place?
Same place, exactly.
Excellent. And don't you also, by the way, have some software that could help with maintaining things?
We do have software,
what is that called?
Software product. It's called Agritecture Designer.
Agritecture Designer, okay.
Yeah, and actually Agritecture Designer is a great source. We have about 5 hours of educational lessons around controlled environment agriculture that folks can, sign up for the software and go through all the classwork independently.
Is it cloud-based software so people would get automatic updates if needed?
Yeah, it's cloud-based. Okay. And then we also have a farm planning tool within the software, so you can run different scenarios and see if your farm, which scenario will be financially viable. So we think it's a really valuable tool, especially for new people who are getting into this industry.
Of course. Well, I really appreciate you being an education and expertise hub for people to come to. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for sharing your wisdom today with us. It's been fantastic. I've really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
So I just wanted to say, everybody, we learned today was about the origins, about the applicability of agritecture, and also the sustainability and the benefits. There's a huge impact that we can have with blending technology with traditional farming so that we can all enjoy wholesome, healthy food. And for those gourmet chefs, as you heard David mention, you might even be able to get that elusive herb grown right in your own backyard so that you can still develop that unique flavor profile. So with that, I wanted to say thank you so much for joining us. We are a little short on time, but please stay with us until we bond again.